every one of us can make a difference.
Yeah.
And we just need to value ourselves, value our decisions, pay the price for our decisions, and know that all of us have that potential to create change in the world.
Welcome to the Leading Through Crisis podcast, brought to you by Revisionary, exploring resilient leadership in a world of constant change. Every few weeks, Céline Williams, speaker, strategist, and trusted advisor to leaders navigating change, brings conversations that explore how to deal with the inevitable and perpetual shifts of leadership. These discussions reveal practical insights, thoughtful strategies, and stories of resilience to help you lead with clarity and calm.
My guest today is Zolal Habibi, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran and a dedicated human rights and women's rights advocate. Welcome, Zolal.
Thank you, Celine. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and my regards to all the viewers and listeners.
I'm very excited to talk to you today. The viewers and listeners know that we always do a little bit of a chat beforehand, and this was one of the most interesting ones I've had in a while, so I cannot wait to get into all of the good stuff we're going to get into. Before we do that, though, I always ask the question. The name of the podcast is Leading Through Crisis. When you hear that phrase or that saying, what does that mean for you, or what comes up for you?
For me, what comes up is the personal experience that I've lived through, really, but also what I've seen growing up, and especially in the Iranian resistance. I think that standing by your principles and standing by your morals, no matter what the price and how difficult it gets, that has been always something that has helped us strive and continue. We have a motto in the Iranian resistance that comes from the president-elect of the movement, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi. She says, we can and we must. She says that we have the capability and capacity to overcome everything if we're willing to pay the price for it. And no matter, how difficult it is, there's always a way forward. And that has been our experience, I guess, to say the least. I think what has always been very inspiring for me, or what I've learned, is, first of all, always to be able to keep your focus on the goal. And that goal for us is freedom. And that's the freedom of the Iranian people. So once you have that aim and that goal, everything comes under that. And then you're able to, clear out all the clutter and just concentrate on what is the main issue. And that has really been able to help us keep a balance and move forward. There have been times that, unfortunately, due to the circumstances, due to what we call now realpolitik, but the reality of the political arena, and unfortunately that a lot of times, there's a lot of hidden agendas, there's appeasement, there's, and the victims are all usually the people and the resistance and whatnot. So we have been the bargaining chip at the table with the Iranian regime for 4 decades. And so we've seen very, very difficult times and times that we didn't know if we were going to be able to overcome it, but we have, and we have always been able to rise, above and much beyond. And so I remember there was a time that someone was telling us that, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not sure if it's the next train coming to run us over or it's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's been quite a fight and struggle, and it hasn't been easy. 120,000 people have sacrificed their lives for freedom in Iran, for just supporting the Iranian resistance. And for standing by their values and their principles and not giving in. A lot of them were given that chance. The regime was, told them, we won't have you executed if you just do something against the movement. And they're like, no, it's not worth it. We're not going to do that. And I think that sacrifice, that is something that has acted as a guarantee in this path for a lot of us. For a lot of us, we have paid a grave price, and that's why we don't think short term, we think more long term, and based on our values and what it is that we all know that this life is short. It's not eternal, and what's going to remain is the place that we leave for the future generation. And how do you want that story to be written? I think that's really important. That's something that guides us. But also, I think that the sacrifice that the Iranian people have made, that is something that gives us it brings responsibility in a way, but it also gives us hope. I think that growing up with that hope and that ambition to see a free Iran, that has been a game changer for me, myself. I've never had the chance to actually see Iran. I was born and raised abroad. My parents came to the US before the revolution as students, so I've never had the chance to see Iran, but I can actually say that there hasn't been a day in my life that I haven't thought about the Iranian people and their plight. And I always thought that if I had the opportunity to grow up in a safe environment, in, just the basics that we sometimes take for granted, what is my responsibility toward my own people? And I think that guides me a lot of times. But I've also had a lot of great role models, people to look up to. And I think that has inspired me in a lot of ways. I mentioned Mrs. Rajavi before. I'm Rajavi, she's the president-elect of the Iranian resistance. She was elected as the president-elect for the interim government after the overthrow of the regime in 1993 by the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which is a parliament in exile. It has about 500 members, and 52% of which are women. Yeah.
I just have to say, I love that.
Yeah, and the president-elect is a woman. That just shows you the role of women. Actually, Mrs. Bajavi has created like a whole not even one generation now, generations of women in leadership. The entire leadership council of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran are all women. And she has said that women are the force for change. And she has said this since the 90s. And at the time that the world was speaking about, Beijing, this year we're celebrating Beijing plus 30 years ago, Hillary Clinton, for the first time at the UN Women's Platform, she said, the CSW, she said, women's rights are human rights. And at that time, that was, something that everyone thought was really progressive and whatnot. At that time, we already had full women in leadership in all positions. So really, she has been a trailblazer in this fact, because she sees that women as the force for change when it comes to the situation in Iran, especially since women are suppressed systematically in Iran. And there's a misogynist regime in power. So it's like a spring. There's this hidden potential, and they've been suppressed so much. So when you take that pressure off, they have so much capability to jump, and to go, far and beyond. And so they have broken a lot of glass ceilings. So fortunately, I was part of a generation that I grew up with that motto, with that, women can do anything, and we saw it in front of us. So I never felt those glass ceilings, even though they were present and they were there, because I had these role models ahead of me. And I think that I've learned how to lead in crisis from what I've seen from them. I think it's really important that Mrs. Rajavi, she's not just like this one individual. She has created like this whole line of people, and she keeps on saying that, I'm not an exception to the rule. Women have that capability, and she believes that you won't see the emancipation of society in its entirety, women and men, until you have women in leadership, and until you actually address this issue that exists in society, that women are suppressed. And it's been historically, it's this mentality that still exists in the world. And this is something that she has gone and fought with. And so I think that resilience and that leadership is what I've learned from. And through crisis, I think that mentality has really helped to be able to persevere and go forward.
I love that she was a trailblazer before anyone was even recognizing that she was a trailblazer, and she was making big, that to me is the absolute definition and embodiment of someone who is living their values, because she's not, no offense to Hillary Clinton, she's not going out and announcing it in a way that is like that. She's just doing it and making it so. And so I just want to acknowledge that because I love hearing that. That is incredible. And I imagine that anyone who is actively involved in the resistance has so many stories of crisis, it's probably overwhelming. And to continue to hold a vision and move towards it and lead from what each of you, each individual, and also as a collective feel is right, to be able to continue to do that is incredibly powerful, and I imagine incredibly difficult sometimes. And I'm curious whether it's your story or other story, but how have you heard or how have you navigated some of that tension? Because there's tension in crisis. We all know this. Crisis creates tension. What are some of the best practices? What are the things that work for navigating that?
What really sets this movement apart, and maybe that's the key to its survival. So you just have a little bit of background.
Please.
The main force in the Iranian opposition, for short, it's called the MEK or the PMOI. It was formed 60 years ago. It's been fighting 60 years without one day of break, I guess you could say. So against both the Shah's dictatorship and then against the mullahs. And it was formed by 3 students, engineering students at the time. And this September, we've celebrated the 60th year. And out of the 60 years, 40 years of this movement has been led by women. And I think we always say in Farsi that we say at the helm of this movement, if you want to explain it in 2 adjectives, it would be honesty and sacrifice. And that's like what we move forward with. You always have to be, when it comes to any situation, be honest with yourself and the person in front of you. So stand by your morals, stand by your standards, don't have double standards, hold yourself accountable the way you hold others accountable, but also self-sacrifice has been key. I think that you won't find anyone in this movement who's not willing to sacrifice their own life for someone else. For anyone else, it doesn't matter who they are. That's why they're here. That's their whole being. I mean, the day I joined the movement, it was the summer of my senior year in high school. I had just graduated. I had gotten a full scholarship. I was going to go and study ophthalmology, but the student uprisings happened in Iran. And for the first time after a decade, there were protests again in Iran. And this time it was people from my generation who were coming to the streets. The generation that they didn't see the 1979 revolution. They were born after that. They had seen nothing but this regime. But they were the ones who came to the streets. And I remember thinking, what am I doing here? I'm not going to be one of those who's going to go to Iran on a plane once it's freed. I need to be there and if I can be a barrier and save someone else's life, that's what I should be doing. Or I always saw myself as someone who would be on the front line fighting this regime, not watching on television what is happening.
Right. Watching other people doing it while you, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I decided to join the Iranian resistance. And at that time, I really didn't think that it would prolong so long. I mean, it's been 26 years now that I've been a member of this resistance, and I'm very proud of that. But at that time, I never thought, to be honest, because we saw, growing up, I grew up with this reality that there were teens who were being killed in Iran for
Yeah.
having a pamphlet, for, you know, basic things, you know. And so I never thought that I would live to see my 40s or be
Yeah.
in my 40s today. And the thing is that I also saw my own parents. My father, he was a prominent writer and a human rights activist. He had a very bright future ahead of him in DC where we lived. He had gotten his doctorates from American U, and he was, you know, on this path. He was a prominent writer and whatnot. But when the executions began in Iran in 1981, he couldn't continue that life anymore. And so he dedicated his life to the situation in Iran. I remember I was about 4 or 5 years old the first time I met people who were victims of torture, and they had all been arrested when they were in their teens or in their early 20s. I saw that and I knew that was the reality. I grew up having friends who were taken to prison with their parents when they were 4 or 5 years old, and they would be taken to watch their parents be tortured as a method of psychological torture on their parents, to break, to give in, you know. And they actually ended up having, you know, their parents killed under torture, and they still had nightmares about that when we were growing up. So I grew up seeing that, and I always thought I was one of the lucky ones because I didn't have to live in those circumstances. But very early on, I learned that the regime knows no borders when it comes to its executions, because my father was killed by the regime in the summer of 1988 when I was 7. And that changed my perspective on a lot of things. But what I learned from my dad was that you have to stand for what you believe in. You can't just be a writer and, you know, write about it and actually inspire others to join the movement and fight and not pay that price yourself. So you have to pay the price for your beliefs, even if it's with your life. And then I also saw my mom, who she was 25 when my dad died. And so you could just imagine 25 with 2
You were
small
both
children.
so young. Your mom,
my brother was only 3 at the time, but she decided to join the resistance too. And at that time, the resistance was based in Iraq. So we went to Iraq and we were there, and then the first Gulf War happened. So it wasn't very safe for children to stay there anymore. So my mom had that, she came to this crossroad again. Like, what do? Do you move back to the US, you know, or do you continue this fight? And so my mom decided, she knew that she didn't want to take a risk on our lives. And she's like, that's just not fair to the kids. So she sent me and my brother back to the US. So we grew up with my aunt, but she decided to stay and stand and fight. And to me, I think that my parents taught me what's important in life, not through their words, but through their own actions. And I am grateful to both of them, and that they taught us, you know, you have to pay a price for your values and for your morals, and it's not going to be easy. It's very difficult. I think for a mother, that's like the hardest thing to do. But it wasn't only my mom, it was, you know, hundreds of other women who made that sacrifice in their lives. And I think that in itself is one of the things that gives hope to people in Iran, because they see, you know, these people who are all really the cream of the crop of Iran's society, who were members of this movement. A lot of them, like over 1,000 of them, are people who had studied abroad and had, you know, people who had jobs in NASA and, you know, high level jobs, university professors in like Michigan State, and we're not, you know, here and there. They left all that behind for their people. And I think that the Iranian people, unfortunately, they've had their trust betrayed so much by these dictatorships. It's heartwarming to see that, hey, there are these people, a few thousand of them, who have sacrificed everything in their personal life only for your freedom. Some of them have been in this since they were teens, and now they're in their 60s,
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of dedication, that speaks for itself, and that's what gives people hope. Why do people take the risk to come to the streets in Iran? Because they have that background, even if because of the censorship, they might not know all the details, but it is in the mindset of society. It has had its cultural effect in society. People know there's a mass grave in Tehran, it's called Khavan. Everyone knows that. That summer of 1988, 30,000 were executed. Or in 1981, every square you went to, there was a public hanging. Everyone has that in their backs out of their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And that has its effect on society. And I think that the only thing that I think one of the worst crimes perpetrated by Khomeini was betraying people's trust.
Mm.
To regain a trust that has been broken, it's very difficult, but I think that trust is being rebuilt with this sacrifice and dedication, because people in Iran know, look, these people don't want anything for them. So if they were after power, there were easier ways to gain power. You don't stand and fight for 40 years, with bare hands at times, just because you want power. There are easier ways to get that if they wanted that.
And also much faster ways to get power.
Oh, that, of course.
Yeah.
But still, even if they were after power or wealth or whatever, this is not the path that you would go.
No.
So that dedication and the fact that it's not just one generation, they see that like there are people in this movement, some, yes, from the first generation, we call them the first generation. So they've been fighting since the time of the Shah. And then there are people who are right now in resistance units inside of Iran. They're in their early 20s. And right now, unfortunately, we see some of them who are in prison. Like, for instance, Ehsan Faridi, he is in his early 20s. He has been sentenced to be executed, and he was an elite student in his university. Or there's so many others. Vahid Bani Amirian, he's on death row with his cousin Puya. And we also have, like, for instance, people who've won the International Olympiad for Sciences, and they are behind prison walls. So they're like the elite of Iran society, but they are behind prison walls only for standing by this movement and for standing for, the freedom of their people. And I think that is what gives hope to people inside of Iran that we will prevail. Also, I think the world was really inspired, or it caught them also off guard a bit when they saw the uprisings in 2022 with women leading and women in, center stage in Iran. But for us, that was completely logical, because we have seen women in leadership for over 30 years. So that was just like the natural path, because when you have a movement that is led by women, it's going to inspire that. And these women know that they're fearless in front of this regime. They have nothing to lose at the end of the day. Everyone knows that, there are actually videos from some of the people who were killed in the uprisings who left like their final messages on social media or to their families. And they said, look, no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. We have to pay the price. So please allow your children to come to the streets. Please don't stop them. We can't, this is what we have now is not a life. We are living, we're breathing, but this is not life. And let us overcome this regime. We have that capability to do that. So I think that in our culture, the culture of resistance has formed.
Mm.
And I think the basis of that is self-sacrifice. When you're not thinking of yourselves, you put everyone else before yourself. That giving, that culture of giving everything for everyone else, that is what gives you the utmost strength, because there's never a limit in giving.
Mm.
You can't set a limit to that. So you have abundance to always give, and that gives you the power to move forward. So it's always in your own hands, nothing can have effect on it, you know? It's a never ending cycle, you know, like no matter how hard the situation is, you could, if you look at it and say like, well, what can I do to change it? Or how can I overcome it? What do I need to give to overcome it? There's nothing that can stop you. But if you're thinking, well, because it's this situation and that person has to do that and that one has to do that for me to do something, then you're always going to be limited and you're not going to be able to strive and move forward.
I am going to make an observation, and you can tell me if you agree with this or if what I'm about to say is totally off base. But when you said that, the a lot of the foundation of what is happening in the resistance and where hope is coming from is comes from this place of self-sacrifice and giving, right? Generosity. Those are very I I'm going to use odd language, but bear with me. But those are characteristics that are that are very common in women. Let's put it that way. They are very feminine. Like, I don't love the language, but we see that a lot. That the power that women want is community power. It is about a collective. It's less about me over other people and more about me with other people. And as part of that, the self-sacrifice, the generosity, the giving, I heard what you said and I'm like, of course, because you have women in power in the resistance and you have had women in power in the resistance for a long time. And so this tracks for me as I'm hearing this. I'm like, great example of what women in power as a collective can bring together and change and elevate versus what we see in maybe more male-led, so, like the regime in Iran as an example where that isn't the case. And I'm saying that I don't know if that makes sense to you, but to me, I'm like, these are really linked.
It actually makes complete sense. So this is the part that gets a bit more complex, but I'll explain it anyways. So Mrs. Rajavi, she had an idea, of the whole, I mean, I don't want to, as you said, I don't want to use the word feminism necessarily,
Yeah.
but what it was is emancipation of human beings, both,
Yes.
in society, both men and women. And it's as a necessity to move forward. We always say that there's a saying in Farsi that a knife can never cut its own hand. If you have that mentality or that ideology that, like for instance, the Iranian regime has, it might be like to small percentage, but you still have it. You're not going to be able to fight it like full-heartedly, because
Mm-hmm.
it does resonate with you somewheres or whatever. But that's like the taboo that Mrs. Rajavi broke. And so
Mm.
she has led with that. And it has been over the years, the term used for it was like an internal revolution within the resistance. Because we said first we have to rid ourselves from that misogynist
Outlook, perspective,
outlook and
mindset.
perspective,
Yeah.
this, male dominance inside. We have to put that aside first to be able to truly bring freedom to our people.
Yeah.
And so this is a whole process. And as you said, it is like the fact in our movement, you will never hear anyone like boast about themselves because it's always about actually being the last person, considering yourself to be below everyone else, and that humbleness and that you feel that there's so much that you can learn from others, and to value the values that they have and learn from that, and to always see yourself as like the servant of everyone in this movement. Anyone who does anything for this movement or for the people of Iran, always be thankful and grateful to all of them. And so that creates a whole new culture, I guess, in how you treat people, how you interact with people, how you honor them, how you carry yourself. And one of the things that we have really overcome is like you won't find jealousy or competition in our movement.
Mm.
That is something that I think history will talk about later, because right now we are so in the midst of everything that we don't really speak about it too much. But like this is one of the things that we usually have an International Women's Day conference every year. And that is the only time in the year that Mrs. Rajavi actually gets to talk about this aspect of what it has been that we've been overcome. And they look forward to this conference every year to hear what is that new obstacle that this resistance has overcome, because it's always moving. It's never, you can't stand in one place, because either you're moving forward or you're moving back, and there's no middle ground here.
Yep.
And so just to hear that progress and how these women and men are interacting with each other. Like for instance, when you have women in leadership, what do you do for the men not to become passive? Because overnight in this movement, the positions changed. In between 1991 and 1993, all the positions in this movement changed, you know. So
yes,
maybe you were the boss of this segment or this department today, or the head of it, and then tomorrow a woman who was maybe 5, you know, things
layers
below
down
you is now heading that movement. And then you're not, it's not that to say you have come lower in this process or anything. In fact, you have gained so much more, and you have so much more respect. Everyone has so much more respect for you, because you are now helping her strive in her new position and helping her. So I mean, this whole process is like a chain of, you know, reactions. And I think that this is one of the beauties of this movement.
Yeah.
I know at least 1 or 2 professors who are actually teaching what they've taken from this movement, as you know, in their women's studies and whatnot in different universities in like Rhode Island or other places. But I think that this is a new phenomenon, and I think that the world can really gain from it. And I think that that's one of the things that I think once Iran is free, not only will Iran flourish itself, but I think that that message and that example can really create major changes, not only in the region, but in the world. I think that there are a lot of people who would be inspired by that, and they could learn from that. I think that it's a solution to a lot of the issues that we are dealing with today in society. And I know that everywhere you speak to people in different countries right now, they have come face to face with such problems. And, you know, this is a prominent issue now. And the fact that no one thought that maybe a group that, you know, a resistance movement from the Middle East that is headed by a Muslim woman is going to have the solution to that problem. But the fact that that is the case, and I think that, yeah, I think that that's something that can leave its footprint in history, and it could lead a lot in society forward. And I think that it's something that the more people learn about it, the more emancipating it can be for them, even in their personal lives. I'm not speaking about like the greater good right now, but like for instance, I was speaking to someone about a week ago, and he has been supportive of this movement since, you know, we've known each other since we're kids and whatnot. Unfortunately, he had a really bad accident in 2000, and he has overcome it completely. I mean, he was paralyzed. Now he walks, he does everything, and he's striving and going far and beyond everything. But he says, you know, the one thing that kept me going was that never give in and never give up, because we had the motto, we can and we must, you know. And I always saw, he said, I looked at the resistance and they made impossibles possible. So I thought, I can make the impossibles possible too. And that, so it can make an impact even in your personal life, just taking away from these, you know, experiences. And I think that's like the beauty of the movement. And hopefully the more lives you can touch and inspire people to, really, I think a human being's willpower is unlimited, but we just don't know how to use our full potential yet.
Yeah.
Mrs. Rajavi always tells us we're only using 2% of our potential. So she always says, you guys can do so much more. So that's what we're striving for on a daily basis. And hopefully with that, we can create the change and impact that's needed to bring freedom for our people.
There is no part of me that imagines that that won't happen, given the continued work that is being done, the commitment to the movement that is clearly in existence, and most importantly, and this is one of the things that I heard throughout everything you said, the being not just talking about the values and morals that we have, not just ideating on these wonderful ideas out in the world that could potentially exist, but the actual living of and embodying those values and morals in action every day.
Exactly.
And that is incredible and powerful. And at the very bare minimum, I hope that people hear this or watch this and really understand that from your stories and from what you shared, because I think to me, it's amazing what happens when we actually embody and do the things, not just talk about the things theoretically that might make a difference, which so many people in the world do. And clearly, you are not doing. I want to ask this last question. For anyone who is listening or watching, what do you hope they take away, or what do you want them to keep in mind as we kind of wrap this up? It couldn't be more than one thing, to be fair. I understand I'm putting you on the spot, but is there something for you that you're like, this?
I'll go back to the first thing that we practically
Please.
spoke about. But I think that move forward with your intuition and your heart. I mean, stand, as you just said, live your values and stand by them no matter how hard or difficult the situation is. It might not be popular, it might not be short term have benefits for you. It might come with a toll or a price, but it's worth it. And never underestimate the effect that you can have in every aspect of society and life. Every one of us can make a difference.
Yeah.
And we just need to value ourselves, value our decisions, pay the price for our decisions, and know that all of us have that potential to create change in the world.
Yeah.
And never lose sight on that. Don't think that I'm just one person. It's usually those one people, that one person who takes that responsibility seriously, that can create change in the world. So every one of us has that potential. Make it strive, make it, embolden it, and stand by it. And I'm sure that you can make the impossible possible. And as Mrs. Rajavi says, we can and we must. So we will overcome. That is something that's within reach. I'd like to share just one example of what you said before.
Yeah.
You asked me paying the price of your values and standing by them. One of the things that's interesting with our movement has been, as a principle, we really stand by keeping our independence.
Mm-hmm.
And at times that's really difficult. And like, for instance, financial independence. We never ask any government for any kind of financial help, but we are willing to go on the street and, ask individual people to make a donation and help this resistance. And a lot of times, I mean, in this heat of the summer and this winter cold, and it's been going on for 4 decades. It's not, it's very difficult, but we rely on people, both Iranians and, people in different countries who have that humanitarian heart and they understand this cause and they really do help us be able to finance everything.
Mm-hmm.
The easier path would have been to, ask some kind of a government that has
Of
some kind of,
course.
they have, they have their benefits in a free Iran too.
Yep.
To work with us because we might be Iran's future, and then that'll be to your benefit. But we've never done that, and that's how we were able to keep our political independence too. When it comes to Iran, we can say, yeah, the solution to Iran, it's not war and it's not appeasement. It's supporting the Iranian people. That is what gives us that firmness to stand our ground and not give
Yes.
in, be it in front of world powers, be it in front of whoever. We're like, you could kill us, you could, have us eliminated, but we're not going to give in. We're not going to give in our fight. We're not going to give in. You could use us as bargaining chips with the Iranian regime, but we're not going to budge, from where we stand. And I think that's what has made us so powerful, that everyone knows that this is a movement that you can't reckon with.
Mm-hmm.
And we've, unfortunately, and standing with our principles, it hasn't been easy. Unfortunately, like for instance, the base of the movement back in 2009, for instance, was attacked with, the Iranian, at the behest of the Iranian regime, by the Iraqi forces with tanks and everything. And they were under US protection, but the US turned away and did not protect them. But despite being face to face with, tanks, but the people in Ashraf at that time, the home of their resistance, they stood with empty hands, but they pushed them back. It meant people being killed. Unfortunately, 11 people died then, but we started this huge international campaign and we were able to push back.
Yeah.
We had hunger strikes in different countries for 72 days. So again, on the self-sacrifice, people, instead of retaliating against the governments for not protecting them, they sacrificed their own well-being, but to send that message to the international community that you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to eliminate these people that are going to stand. And through these, this has been time and time and again. And what happened then? Nothing. The regime feared that it was going to be overthrown. It was the 2009 uprising. And this is the only way they were able to suppress the protests in Iran, because they knew that the resistance was busy trying to keep its own members alive at that time. So, time and time and again, this has happened. But the fact that we have set historic precedents, even in the legal arena, like for instance, court cases, international court cases that have this resistance has won over the years, it's been unprecedented and they've now gone down in history. But the fact that in every court, this is something that this movement has always stood for. They're like, if you have, because the Iranian regime, we are the #1 target of smear campaigns and disinformation campaigns of the regime. It's so you probably will come face to face with it because they will have you attacked for doing this interview. The thing is that over the years, we've said, if you can, we're willing to go to court, any international court. If you have really some kind of a crime that you say we've committed, bring it to international court. We're willing to go, and every court that we have gone, we have always won, because we stand by our moral standards and our values. And even if that means being labeled as this and that, we have no problems with that. We'll stick to that, but we're going to stand our ground. And I think that has made us stronger over the years. And our friends have also, through this process, they've become stronger too. And just understanding what the situation is, but also in their own lives or in how they carry, they're in their own fields, how they move forward, because they've had the possibility to learn from these experiences too.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that story. I appreciate you adding that on at the end. I think it's incredibly important and very powerful. And I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to chat with me today and sharing your stories and your perspective and your insights. I know it's going to be incredibly enlightening for anyone who listens to or watches this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming and sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me this time, and it was a pleasure to be with you and to speak with you. And I wish all the viewers and listeners all the best too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Leading Through Crisis, hosted by Céline Williams and brought to you by Revisionary. To learn more, visit leadingthroughcrisis.ca. Connect with Céline on LinkedIn and explore the show notes for resources and next steps. Until next time, keep leading with courage and clarity.